If you're traveling on the Inside Passage, you'll see many totem poles, standing in Pioneer Square in Seattle, in the park behind Vancouver's Museum of Anthropology, along a beautiful forest trail in Sitka. These and most of the other totem poles that stand out of doors are relatively new, for left to the elements, poles such as this pair from Alert Bay, British Columbia, photographed new in 1909, become like this today. Totem poles have fascinating histories. Some of the places one sees poles today had none during the 19th century. For example, the famous Ketchikan poles were not originally in Saxman or in Totem Pole. During the Depression, the Public Works Administration supported Haida and Tlingit carvers who salvaged deteriorating poles from abandoned villages in southeast Alaska and restored or replicated them to be erected in tourist-oriented parks. This story of salvage and restoration of poles inspired by non-natives was repeated throughout the 20th century and explains the presence of innumerable monuments in Seattle, British Columbia, and Alaska. Some poles went on interesting excursions on their way to where they stand today. Here is a village of Kasan in the late 19th century. Some of its poles, as well as poles from other villages, were given in 1901 to the governor of Alaska, John Brady, for a park he planned for Sitka. Before that happened, however, 13 poles first traveled to the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, where they stood before the Alaska Building, and then on to the Lewis and Clark Exposition in Portland in 1905. When they finally returned to Sitka, the poles were erected along the trail at the National Historical Park. In the 1960s, a few left once again to stand outside the Alaska Pavilion at the New York World's Fair. Over the decades, Sitka's original 19th century poles crumbled and decayed, and all were eventually replaced. What you see now on the trail are well-carved replicas. Remains of the originals are inside the National Park building. Today, one can see poles of all sorts on the Inside Passage. A question regularly asked is, what do they mean? This is not such an easy question to answer. Some within museums are the actual 19th century monuments that communicated the history and the status of the family that owned them. Others are copies of these poles, the results of non-native sponsored projects. But other recent monuments have diverged considerably from traditions. Some are strikingly original artworks. Others address contemporary issues, including native sovereignty over the land, biting criticisms of 19th century American atrocities against Native people, celebrations of successful repatriations of stolen treasures. The totem poles along the Inside Passage offer travelers compelling insights into Northwest Coast Native cultures. These magnificent works of art communicate a wealth of information about the complex history of the indigenous people who live in this splendid region and celebrate their ongoing cultural and artistic strength.